back and thank you for joining. Today we are making a super easy spaghetti recipe, and the reason it's so easy is because it's actually really quick to make. There's not a lot of ingredients, and instead of doing meatballs, we're gonna do a meat sauce. So the reason I chose a meat sauce today is because it's actually much faster and much easier to make compared to meatballs for your spaghetti. So for this recipe, what you're gonna need is 1 pound of hamburger. Your parent and guardians can help you out with this, but 1 pound of lean ground beef is actually just 0.45 kilograms. So it's approximate. So that's approximately 1 pound. So that's perfect. And then you're gonna need tomato sauce, tomato paste, pepper, hot water, sugar, dried basil, dried oregano, garlic, and spaghetti noodles. So in the description below, I'm gonna list all of the ingredients, so don't worry about having to memorize everything you need. So just check down there and it will give you the measurements and ingredients. And the first thing we're actually gonna do here is you need to go and wash your hands, and then we're actually gonna start cooking our hamburger on our stove here. So I actually have my stove here just on medium heat, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna start cooking our meat here. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the pan. And with a wooden spoon, I'm just gonna go ahead and start breaking it apart. We've done this in a few recipes that we've done already. We've done this in the nachos recipe, and we've also done this in the sloppy joes recipe. So hopefully you know how to cook ground beef after watching all of these YouTube videos. It's quite simple and quite easy. So I just kind of went ahead and am breaking up my meat here. And hopefully you know the answer to this question. How do you know when this is all cooked? I'll give you a second to think about it. And if in your head you were thinking when it's all brown, you would be correct. So we're just going to cook this until all of the meat is completely brown. And that's how you know it's done. So we're just gonna go ahead and keep doing that. I'm stirring it only once in a while. And again, 1 pound is approximately 0.45 kilograms, approximately. Not exact, but it's approximately that. And again, your parent and guardians can help you with that. So I'm just gonna give this a stir. As you can see, it's going brown already. Hopefully you're following along with me. I find that's the easiest way to watch these videos, is if you're following along at the same time. I'm gonna give it another stir here. Notice how I'm kind of letting it sit for 30 to 45 seconds, and then I give it a stir. So there's lots of juice coming off this hamburger here. and that's why I didn't grease my pan ahead of time. I just put my hamburger right in. I didn't use spray, I didn't use oil, I didn't use anything because there is so much juice that comes off of the hamburger that you don't need to use any grease. So it's actually almost done here. I'd say in probably 2 more minutes, the hamburger is going to be completely cooked, and I'm gonna do this along with you. So your meat should be pretty brown by this point, and we should be almost done cooking it. Okay, it's almost fully cooked here. I'd say another 45 seconds. Make sure your meat is all brown. You don't want to see any pink. Alright, one more stir here. This is a really great recipe. It's fast, not a lot of ingredients, and you can feed your whole family with this recipe. Okay, so it looks completely done, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my stove. So I've turned off my stove, and notice that there's a lot of juice left in my pan. So what you're gonna do is you're actually gonna very carefully drain the juice out of the meat here. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cover it with a lid, and very gently and carefully I'm gonna drain all of the liquid out of it. And so I want you to go ahead and do that, and then we're gonna come back. Okay, so now that we're back, your hamburger should be completely drained of all of the juice. So again, this recipe is super simple because the rest of it, we are just gonna put everything, all of our ingredients into this pan, and then we're gonna let it simmer, and then all you have to do after that is make the noodles. So at this point, I need you to grab your tomato sauce, tomato paste, salt and pepper. We're gonna grab hot water, sugar, basil, oregano, and garlic. So that's what's gonna be going into our sauce here. So the first thing I need you to do is put your stove top onto the lowest setting possible. So go ahead and do that. Now we're gonna add 1 can of tomato sauce, 8 ounces. So I have a large can of tomato sauce here, and I don't need that much. So on my liquid measuring cup, beside the 1 cup measurement is the number 8. So that means 8 ounces. So I'm gonna pour my tomato sauce in here until I get to the 8 ounce point. So I have a tiny bit of sauce left over in my can. So about 1 cup of tomato sauce we're gonna add to our pan here. And definitely use a spatula to get everything out of your measuring cup here. Okay, so there's that. Next is our tomato paste, and we only need 6 ounces. So 6 ounces is just over 2/3. This is going to be our 6 ounce point. So most cans of tomato paste are already 6 ounces, for a small can. But I had a really large can of tomato paste. So again, I'm just going to fill my measuring cup here until I get to the 6 ounce mark. which I think is just going to be the rest of my tomato paste here. Perfect, so that's about 6 ounces here. So like I said earlier, most cans of tomato paste are quite small, and that's actually exactly 6 ounces. So if you have a small can of tomato paste, just use the whole thing. I just had a really large can of tomato paste, so I didn't need to use all of it. Okay, so there's my tomato paste and tomato sauce. I'm just going to stir this in a tiny bit here. Okay. Perfect. So before we add our other spices, I want you to grab your salt and pepper. Salt and pepper is just strictly for taste. So it's totally up to you how much salt and how much pepper you decide to put in. So I'm just gonna crack some salt in here. That's good. And then I'm going to sprinkle some pepper in here. Again, it's totally up to you how much of each you put in. If you really like spice, you can put extra pepper in. If you don't like spice, you can just put a tiny bit of pepper in. Okay. So there we are. Now we're gonna add our 2 cups of hot water. So I'm just gonna put my sink on to hot, and I'm gonna go ahead and grab that. Okay, so I've went ahead and measured out 1 cup of hot water. I'm just gonna stir it in a little bit before I add the next cup. And don't be alarmed if your sauce looks really watery. When we get to the end of adding all of our ingredients, we are actually gonna let it simmer for an hour, which is when it thickens up. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and add my second cup here. Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna start adding our spices. So we're gonna add 2 teaspoons of sugar. And in previous recipes that I've made, other recipes call for more sugar. So I might actually use a bit more than that. So I'm gonna maybe do, so there's 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, and I'm just gonna do a tiny bit more, but 2 teaspoons is perfect. Okay. Now we're gonna add half a teaspoon of dried basil. And so for me, I really like lots of flavor in my spaghetti sauce. So actually what I might do is add extra basil and oregano to my recipe here. So I'm gonna take my basil leaves here, and I'm actually gonna do, about a teaspoon. But technically your recipe calls for half a teaspoon, but I just want lots of flavor. So I'm just using my discretion here. And then again, your recipe calls for half a teaspoon of dried oregano, but I'm gonna do about a teaspoon, just under a teaspoon, for some extra flavor. I'm just gonna stir this in. So again, don't worry if your sauce looks watery. It's actually the tomato paste that acts as a thickener. So as we let this simmer for an hour, it's going to really thicken up, and you'll notice that. So don't be alarmed if you think your sauce looks really watery. Okay, the last thing that is going to go into our tomato sauce here is a small dash of garlic. So you can use garlic powder if you don't have fresh garlic or garlic in a jar. So I'm just gonna add about a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic. So again, I just did 1/4 teaspoon of garlic. And make sure everything is all nicely mixed in. Okay, so your stove should be on the lowest setting possible still. And we're gonna let this sit and simmer for about 1 hour. So what simmering does is it makes it thicken, and it's going to really bring out all of the flavors that we have put into our sauce. So go ahead and grab a large lid. So I'm actually going to use this one here to cover your sauce with. And then we're just going to let this sit exactly like this for about 1 hour. And then as soon as it's done simmering, we are gonna make the noodles as well. So pause the video, let your sauce simmer for 1 hour, and then come back. Okay, everybody, welcome back. It has been over an hour. My sauce has been simmering, and it has really thickened up, and it has made this really nice spaghetti sauce here. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn my stove off for that one. It looks really nice here, okay? So now it's time to make our noodles. So this is very basic. You're basically going to follow the directions on your box that you have, but pretty much you're gonna wanna take boiling water, and you're gonna want to add a little bit of salt in your boiling water so that your noodles don't stick together. I have already done that. And then once your water is boiling and once you have added in some salt, you're just going to cook some noodles. Now, depending on how many people you're feeding, that's gonna depend how many noodles you make. Here's a small handful of noodles, and this will feed about 2 people. So if you're feeding a lot of people, I would say use half of a small bag, but kind of use your discretion. A really important thing when making noodles is to have a large pot of water. So if your pot is too small, it will take forever for your noodles to cook. So it's really important that you have a large pot of boiling water. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put my handful of noodles in here like that. And then as they slowly start to soften, I'm just going to push them down. It might take a minute. I'm just going to push them down until they're fully submerged. Now, typically, noodles need to boil on the stove for approximately 8 to 10 minutes. So if you're not really sure about your boxed instructions for the noodles. Just boil them for 8 to 10 minutes, and then after 8 minutes I would take one out and give it a try and then see if it's the consistency you'd like it. So we're just gonna leave our noodles exactly like this on the stove for 8 to 10 minutes until they are the texture that you like. And yeah, so you don't need to stir them. They're just gonna simply sit here and boil until they are the texture that you like. Keep an eye on them, because if your water starts to boil over, you're just gonna turn it down. But yeah, so keep an eye on it, and then once your noodles are done boiling, come back and then I will show you the final product. Okay everybody, so my noodles have completely boiled and they are at the perfect texture. So I've just strained them and then put them back into my pot here. So for those of you who aren't sure, I used a strainer like this. I put it in the sink, and then using oven mitts, I poured all of the water and the noodles into the strainer to get rid of all the water. And then I just put the noodles back in the pot. So I'm actually just gonna show you how you can dish it up here. So I'm just gonna take some noodles here and put them into my bowl. So as you can see, it made quite a bit of noodles. And you're just gonna put however much you want into a bowl here. I just have to use my hands to get these all off. Okay, and then I'm just gonna scoop some sauce on here, and I'm gonna show you what this looks like in just a second. Okay, so that's what I have there. And spaghetti goes really great with some Parmesan cheese on top. So it's really great with a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And then this part is totally optional. I, at the store, bought some garlic bread and I just put it in the oven to go with my garlic bread. So there we are. We've got fresh, homemade hot spaghetti. So again, super easy to make. It's pretty fast, with the exception of it just needs to simmer. The sauce needs to simmer on the stove. But yeah, really great for kids to make because it is really quite simple with the meat sauce. Yeah, the garlic bread is totally extra. I just bought that when I was at the grocery store. And there we are. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Send me some photos of your results. I would love to see how it turned out, and I'll see you next time.